The Atlanta Braves just refuse to lose. Are they the best team in baseball right now? And what to do with Ozzie Albies after this latest injury? We'll talk about all that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. We're getting closer and closer to 15,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I appreciate all the support that you give me here at Locked On Braves. On the audio side, you can help out as well. Just leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever it is that you get your podcast. And again, thanks so much for your support of Locked On Braves. Thanks so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. And big shout out to all the everydayers out there who hung with me through a pretty tough season, but you're getting a pretty fun end to the year as here on the end of the 2025 campaign. That's what I want to talk about today. Look at a little bit on the bright side. Is this the best team in baseball right now? Is this version of the Atlanta Braves a World Series contender? We'll talk about that. We'll also look at standouts from the minor league level last week, the final week of the minor league season for the Braves farm teams. And we'll talk about that Ozzie Albies injury. What does that mean for him in the offseason? Alex Anthopoulos, do they now need to make a move in the offseason for second base? We'll discuss all that on today's podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Well, the Atlanta Braves might just be the best team in baseball right now. A 9-game winning streak for the Atlanta Braves. And the way that they're playing, and especially the last several games now, that series in Detroit was really kind of the turning point for me. You sweep the Nationals in a 4-game series. That's impressive, better than what they've done a lot of this season against teams they should be beating. But what they get against Detroit, and again, I know that's a slumping team, but just the way that they played and showing some fight, proving me wrong, and that this team hadn't quit and given up, it looks like this is a really good team. Now, obviously, a little bit of a headline catcher there trying to bring you in. I don't think this is the best team in baseball right now, but I do think this is proving that this team is not as far off as maybe we believe. Now, again, I'll say this, and I was going to try to be really positive, and I am, but a hot stretch to end the season against the Nationals, a struggling Tigers team, and potentially the Pirates should not make you forget about the fact that this team was not very good for 4.5 months. So don't let this end of season run here completely fool you. This team was not good for 4.5 months, and offensively weren't great for over 1.5 years. But this team right now, if they were in the postseason, I don't think they would be the favorites to win it all. But the way that the offense is firing on all cylinders, they are finally consistently hitting the way that we thought they could and getting contributions up and down the batting order. I think Ha-Seong Kim's been a big part of that. We're going to talk about him in a podcast later this week, how I think the Braves should try to extend him now if they can. But just up and down the order now, they're starting to get contributions. Even, Michael Harris starting to turn things around a little bit here in the last week or so is great to see. Drake Baldwin getting hot again. Ronald, has been hot again, which is great to see. So it's the offense that we all thought this team could be. And you look at the starting rotation, and Sale, I know Monday night, bit of a hiccup there in that 5th inning. Look, I don't put too much onto it. It was some long innings that he was having to sit through. You could see him in the dugout trying to stretch, stay loose, clearly lost the command in that 5th inning. So push that start aside. I'm taking Chris Sale up against anybody in game 1 of a series. Strider's starting to look like that number 2, 3 starter at the top of the rotation, getting more confidence in that curveball. I mean, I'd go to battle in a series with those two guys at the top of my rotation. And then you got Bryce Elder in the way that he's throwing, and Hurston Waldrop to help supplement the rotation. So again, it's not, certainly that's you hope for better than that. You throw Schwellenbach in there and you're really cooking. You get Ronaldo Lopez, Grant Holmes in there, and I feel much better. But I mean, that's a rotation that I could win with. I think bullpen is still the weakest part of this team right now, especially behind Iggy, who's looked fantastic. I just don't have a lot of trust, confidence in Pierce Johnson or Dylan Lee right now. Might have more confidence in Tyler Kinley at the moment. So that definitely is still the weak part of this lineup. If the Braves were to be going into a postseason series, that would be the weak spot that I would be worried about, and just the depth in the starting rotation. So again, trying to be positive, look at this streak that the Braves are on and wonder what could be. Probably not the favorites going into the postseason. Probably not going to make too much noise, but I think they would have a chance. And let me know what you think. Of the playoff teams right now, who would you take the Braves to win a series over? For me, I take them up against the Mets and the Reds, and I take them up against the Guardians and Tigers, but I really don't think there's anybody else in the postseason right now that I would take the Braves in a series, that I would feel very confident with the Braves in a series against. And part of that is we just saw them go up against the Cubs, the Mariners, and the Astros, and the Cubs series was pretty competitive. They lost both of them, and they lost the other two series, but a couple of those games in both of those series against the Astros and the Mariners just weren't even competitive. So that's why I say I don't buy too much into what's happened over the last week or so with this Braves winning streak, just based on the competition. And we just saw them playing some postseason teams, and they didn't really stack up. But you look at the what if in this season for the Atlanta Braves. And I get it. This all happened. Like I said earlier, you can't ignore the fact that this Braves team just was not good for a majority of the season. But since the 0-7 start, they're now 74-76. So they're about a 500 team. If they were to win 3 of their next 5 games, they would be above 500 team. So again, not great. Yeah, they'd be hanging into that postseason conversation, but still not likely to be a postseason team. But they would be about a 500 team. And you can't take away those first 7 games, just like you can't take away the 7-game road trip they just had where they won all 7 games. But you're looking at more like an 84-85 win team, which would, put them right there in that postseason conversation. And plus, when you consider the fact that they've gone 19-34 in one-run games, you go just 26-27. Say they go 500 in one-run games. I mean, you're looking at pushing 87, 88 wins this season for the Atlanta Braves. So I get these games happen, and you can't change it. But hopefully you can see how this team isn't that far off from being contenders again. For those of you who just think this core is completely finished, they need to tear it down and rebuild, hopefully this is kind of showing you why that shouldn't be the case. And while I say don't get caught up too much in what happened here in the finale, if this stretch of games had come in June and the Braves, won 8, 9, 10 of these, whatever the case it's going to be, I don't think anybody would have blinked an eye, because these are teams that the Braves should be beating. So again, it's coming at the end of a bad season, and I get that. But I think if this stretch of games were earlier in the year and they did the same thing or something similar, nobody would bat an eye. So I don't completely discount it towards what they could have been or what they could be. So mainly just with all of what the Braves are doing right now, I still don't think this group is World Series contending ready, but it does just kind of cement the thought that this team's not that far off. There are a few adjustments away from being that World Series contender. There are a few things from happening this year from being an 87, 88 win team and possibly being in that last wild card spot. And just imagine how much better this team could have been. This is where you're playing the what if scenarios. What if Alex Anthopoulos would have gone out and spent more money on the bullpen, and so that you're not throwing Hector Neris out there on opening day and blowing that one, and probably some other games that they lost in that first month of the season because they didn't have a well-established bullpen. There's one what if for you right there. What if Jerickson Profar doesn't get suspended and miss basically the first 80 games of the season. We've seen what a difference maker he's been. I know he's slumped a little bit here lately, but still over an 800 OPS this season. How big of a factor would that have been with a sluggish offense in the first half of the season? So just little things like that you can see where the season could have been a lot different. And instead of being, a 76, 78 win team, whatever they're going to end up being, you could have seen them being an 85, 87 win team and being in the postseason. It's really not that far off. And if you consider the fact that they make the adjustments that you hope that they make this offseason, you can see them coming into next year and being postseason contenders, potentially World Series contenders again. So like I said, I get it. You can't ignore what happened for the first 4.5 months this year. You can't ignore what happened on the entirety of the season. But I do hope this kind of puts to rest, and I know it won't. I'll get the comments that this team needs to just completely rebuild, that you don't buy into this stretch, and I get that. But hopefully for some of you, it gives you a little bit more hope that this team isn't that far away from being real contenders again in 2026. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Next, we'll get into our minor league spotlight, and then we'll end the podcast talking about that Ozzie Albies injury and how that could change the postseason focus or the offseason focus for the Atlanta Braves. We'll get into that here next. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there, it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people, and it's not just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root causes of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. Whether you're at work, out with friends, or even just getting ready in the morning, Nutrafol gives you more confidence in your daily routine. And you can feel good about it knowing Nutrafol is NSF certified and backed by peer-reviewed studies. See thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code Locked On MLB. Again, that's code Locked On MLB at Nutrafol.com for $10 off your first month's subscription. Thank you as always for making Locked On Braves your very first listen of each and every day. Make sure you go make Locked On MLB your second listen of the day. They'll get you caught up with all the postseason races happening down the stretch here. What's happening in the AL Central big series starting on Tuesday between the Tigers and the Guardians. You got the NL wildcard race right now. The Mets, the Reds, the Diamondbacks. That's going to be fun to watch here down the stretch. Locked On MLB, keeping you posted and up to date on all of that. The guys from MLB Game Night, they've done a fantastic job all year long. Make sure you go give them a listen. We'll have a full week for you here on Locked On Braves. Like I said, we'll have an episode later this week talking about Ha-Seong Kim and trying to get him locked up. Probably be talking more about the Ozzie Albies injury and what that could mean for the postseason. And we'll obviously have our mailbag episode on Friday. We'll probably get more into Charlie Morton too. Won't talk about it a lot today. Once we have an idea of what he'll actually do with the Braves or if he'll pitch again, we'll probably talk more about that later in the week too. But this is our weekly minor league spotlight segment, which is going to be much shorter than it usually is, as everybody's done now. But Gwinnett had their final week last week. I'll give you the highlights from that week. Connor Capel went 9 for 24 with 2 doubles, 1 home run, 1 walk, 3 stolen bases. C-Rod went 8 for 24 with a double. Jesus Bastidas went 6 for 20 with a double, 3 walks, and 3 stolen bases. And David McCabe, 6 for 18, a double, 2 home runs, and 3 walks, really finishing off his AAA campaign strongly after a bit of a rough start, but overall a fantastic season for David McCabe, as you're going to see more of when we get into our leaders from the AA level. On the pitching side last week for Gwinnett, Alexis Diaz, 2 innings, 2 hits, no walks, no earned, and 4 strikeouts. Amazing what he can do when he doesn't walk everybody. Hayden Harris, 2 innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, no earned runs, also 4 strikeouts. Roldy Munoz, 2 innings, 1 hit, did walk 2 batters, but still no earned runs and 4 strikeouts. It's amazing what Roldy Munoz can do even when he walks batters, but still strikes everyone out. J.R. Ritchie, 5 1/3, 5 hits, 3 walks, 2 earned, 4 strikeouts. Not his best outing to end his season. Lucas Braun, 7 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, no earned, 3 strikeouts. Another very solid outing for Lucas Braun. Ian Anderson, 6 innings, 7 hits, just 1 walk, but did give up 4 earned runs and only 1 strikeout. I don't know where Ian Anderson goes from here. Very interested to see what the future holds for Ian Anderson and whether or not that future is held with the Atlanta Braves. You look at the season leaders at Gwinnett. The leader in hits was Carlos Rodriguez with 117, followed by Eddie Leonard with 105 and Luke Waddell with 88, which Luke Waddell also led the team with a 272 batting average, minimum of 200 at bats. Luke Waddell, I think he's kind of in that same Nacho Alvarez conversation. Super utility type of guy, can play all over, play solid defense, just a ball player. I think he's probably a step below Nacho Alvarez, but I do think he's in that same type of level as a super utility guy, could fill in for you here or there. Guy with a good role off the bench. We'll see what they do with him. Carlos Rodriguez was second on the team in batting average. Again, 200 minimum at bats, 247 average. So see, not much else happening there average-wise at Gwinnett. Home run leader was also Leonard. He hit 20 home runs, followed by Batten, who hit 11. And then stolen base leaders, Capel with 21 and Searod with 17. On the pitching side of things, your ERA leader with a 50 minimum innings pitched was J.R. Ritchie at 3.02 and just 59 and 2/3 innings. Nathan Wiles, 3.04 and 112 and 2/3 innings. Feels like Nathan Wiles just had, that season. He just very good AAA pitcher, but not necessarily translating to the big league level. I'm forgetting the name of the guy that was with the Braves for the last couple of years that was like that, but just kind of that 4A pitcher. Really good numbers at AAA. Got a little bit of a chance at the big league levels. Didn't go that well. Hurston Waldrop was third on the team in ERA at 4.42 and 91 and 2/3 innings. Rough start for Waldrop, obviously. To get it even to 4.42 after the start he had is pretty impressive. Hayden Harris had a 0.31 ERA in 29 and a third innings. Wander Suero, 1.35 and 46 and 2/3. Jesse Chavez, 2.05 ERA in 30 and 2/3 innings. And Jackson Stevens, 2.57 ERA in 49 innings. Just missed the minimum innings pitched mark for these rankings here at 49 innings. Otherwise, he would have led the way with that 2.57 ERA. J.R. Ritchie led the way in whip at 1.09, followed by Wiles at 1.24. Davis Daniel at 1.44. It's not very good. Waldrop at 1.47. Hayden Harris had a 0.72. Stevens a 1.02. And Suero 1.03. Jackson Stevens quietly a really strong year for Gwinnett this past season. Strikeout leader was Nathan Wiles at 105. Waldrop at 92. Davis Daniel at 81. And Giancarlos Lara at 7.8. And Lara led all of Gwinnett with a 13.76 K per 9, followed by Hayden Harris at 12.89, Suero at 11.38, Ritchie 9.2, Waldrop 9.03, Wiles 8.39, Stevens 7.71, and Davis Daniels 7.19. At Columbus, your season leaders there, David McCabe had the most hits at 106, followed by Drew Compton at 100, Ethan Workinger at 99. McCabe also led in batting average at 286, followed by Compton at 251 and Adam Zabrowski at 231. Those drop off really, really quickly. As a reminder, as I always do, the Southern League, very pitcher-friendly league. So take some of these offensive numbers with a grain of salt. So when you see David McCabe hitting 286, that's very, very impressive. Home run leader was Ethan Workinger with 16. McCabe and Geraldo Quintero each had 10. Quintero also led the team in stolen bases with 29. Kevin Kilpatrick had 22 and Cal Conley 21. On the pitching side at Columbus, Blaine Abetta, a name I said almost every week on here, finished with a 2.29 ERA and 51 innings pitched. Certainly a name to keep an eye on. Ian Mejia, 2.62 ERA and 127 and a third innings. Blake Burkhalter, 3.13 and 72 innings. Landon Harper, 3.59 and 107 and 2/3 innings. And Lucas Braun, a 3.99 ERA and 130 and 2 innings. Roldy Munoz had a 2.11 ERA and 38 and a third innings. Whip leaders, Abetta again, 1.06. Also Mejia at 1.06. Harper at 1.11. Braun at 1.11 and Burkhalter at 1.28. Strikeout leader, Lucas Braun at 134, Mejia 106, Harper 106, but Abetta led in at K per 9 with 12, Braun at 9.23, and Harper at 8.78. Very interested to see what happens with Ian Mejia and landed Harper this offseason. Both of those guys have to be added to the roster or else they could potentially lose them in the Rule 5 draft. I don't think anybody would lose too much sleep. They're mostly likely just depth starters. Maybe they could be some bullpen pieces, but will be a decision the Braves have to make this offseason. All right, next we'll get into the news from Monday, specifically Ozzie Albies fractured hamate bone and Charlie Morton coming back. We'll discuss all that here next. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel allows you to bet the way that you like with player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game a little bit more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. Maybe you're getting ready for the MLB postseason. You get in on that as well. Or you've already moved on to the college football season, NFL season, whatever the case may be. You can see it all right there at FanDuel.com. Also, please make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. And again, with your first $5 bet, if it wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet today. So some unfortunate news for the Atlanta Braves. They got this hot streak going. Everything's looking good. They look like they're one of the best teams in baseball. But as happens with this Braves team, somebody gets injured. And as happens quite frequently, it's Ozzie Albies, who swings funny, didn't even hit anything. I guess he barely hit the baseball, fouled it off. You saw him kind of looking at his hand a little bit. George Poulos comes out. They poke and prod on some things. And Ozzie leaves the game. We find out later he has a fractured hamate bone. Same hand, wrist that he hurt last year. And it's just very, very frustrating. And now you go into the offseason after Ozzie had turned things around. Now, granted, last 15 days he had cooled off quite a bit, but Ozzie had really turned things around in the second half. Seemed like a no-brainer to pick up that option. I still think you pick up that option just because you're not saving that much money if you don't, but we'll talk about that more later in the week. But I think what this does change for Alex Anthopoulos in the offseason is that you got to find somebody who can back up second base. Maybe that's Nacho. I'm not too sold on that, but I think it's very important that you find a good, if you're going to keep Ozzie around, and I don't know, we'll see how long he's going to miss with this hamate bone injury, but it clearly seemed like it was affecting his power coming into the season. And it, seemed like maybe he was finally getting healthy, and that's why you were seeing that power come back and seeing him produce. And so now you have to wonder, does that bleed into next year again? And are you dealing with the same thing with a lack of power Ozzie Albies, which is just a completely different player, because Ozzie's always been somebody that is built and based on that power. And if that's not there, you're looking at a 600, 650 OPS type of player. And that's just not quite good enough, especially when he's not exactly, bringing a ton defensively either. Although I do think that's gotten better. So I think this changes the mindset for Alex Anthopoulos going into the offseason, where you got to make sure going into next year that you have somebody that can back up second base and you feel pretty comfortable with. And I don't know that Nacho is that guy. Maybe they're still evaluating that. Maybe that's what they're still going to evaluate in the Arizona Fall League. We talked a little bit yesterday. I didn't think it was actually legitimate, but could they put Nacho at shortstop in the Arizona Fall League and give him a look there in case Kim doesn't pick up his option? Now it might be, do you put him at second base and get him some reps there, depending on what happens with Ozzie? Ozzie just seems to get hurt too easily. It's unfortunate. Love the guy. And especially every other year. And this was the year where he was healthy for most of the year. But you look, going back to 2020, it started this pattern of every other year he misses significant time. And now you have to worry about that going into 2026. And like I said, I still think they pick up the option just because you're not saving that much money by declining it. And the timeline for this, shouldn't be too terribly long. But again, you do wonder what lingering effect does that have on him coming into next season. So we'll talk about that more later in the week as we get more information. The other big news of the day is Charlie Morton is back. And I guess that wasn't surprising to many. We talked about it a little bit on the postcast the other day. Yet to announce the plans for Charlie Morton, if he's actually going to pitch. I would assume you would. I mean, you're out of it. Why not let him pitch and pitch with the Brave one more time? I would imagine this is some sort of just retirement tour here. Maybe it will be for him and Brian Snitker. We'll see. But I would imagine he's just signing with the Braves to kind of end things here in Atlanta where it all started, which I'm fine with and I love. I'm glad that Charlie Morton's back. I'm glad we're going to get to see him, end things here in Atlanta. I think that'll be very, very cool. However, to bring in Charlie Morton, they sent Giancarlo Lara back. And that infuriates me because it was one of the things I was most excited to watch in this final week was Giancarlo Lara and what he could do. And so you at least have some idea of what he looks like going into next season, where he could be a big part of your bullpen. And I just hate it. Again, perfectly fine with with getting Charlie Morton and letting him end his career potentially as a Brave. But send somebody else back, not Lara, especially since if he would have debuted over the weekend, fine. Send him back down, whatever. The fact you called him up, didn't even let us see us when you had two really good chances on Friday and Sunday to do so, and then you option him back. It just is very, very frustrating for me as a fan because I wanted to see Lara just selfishly. I wanted to see him at the big league level. And now we're most likely not going to get that unless there's some sort of injury or something like that. And maybe there's an injury with Lara. I don't know. Maybe more information will come out about that. But it's just very, very frustrating that we didn't at least get to see him pitch this season. Like I said, unless something changed. The Braves also claimed Joel Payamps. Big arm for Payamps. Had been really good before this year. Is a free agent after this season, though. So I don't know really that there's much future there with that. They DFA'd Connor Siebold and Carson Ragsdale. Carson Ragsdale, we never even knew you. I don't even think I ever announced that on this podcast. That's how little I cared about that. Matt Olson won NL Player of the Week. Had a 1386 OPS in 7 games, 8 extra base hits, 3 home runs, 12 runs, and 10 RBI. We talked about one of the things to watch this week. Could he finish 130 and 100 season? Well, he had a perfect opportunity on Monday night. Came up with the bases loaded 3 times, struck out twice, and flied out deep to left in one of those appearances. So it didn't help himself out there on Monday too much, but still very rewarding reward there for Matt Olson. What's been a great season for him. So now we'll do this episode of Locked On Braves. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next.